Amora sat at the back of the class, her head bent low as she scribbled in her notebook. The words blurred before her eyes, not because she didn't understand the lesson, but because of the whispers, sharp, mocking, slicing through the air like knives. She looks like she swallowed a whole bakery, someone snickered. And she dresses like she got her clothes from a donation box, another voice added. Amora clenched her pen tighter, her heart pounding. She could hear everything. They weren't even trying to be quiet. But what was new? It had been this way since her first day at Crestwood Academy, the most prestigious school in the city. Here, students flaunted designer bags, expensive watches, and the latest gadgets like trophies. If you didn't fit into their world of luxury, you didn't matter. And Amora? She was invisible, until they wanted to laugh at someone. "Hey, fatso." A folded piece of paper landed on her desk. Her stomach twisted as she slowly opened it. The words hit like a slap. "Maybe if you walk home instead of rolling, you'll lose some weight." The class erupted in laughter. Amora didn't cry. She never did. Crying would only make it worse. Instead, she carefully folded the note and tucked it under her book, pretending it didn't bother her. Pretending their words didn't cut her deeper than any blade ever could. The bell rang, and students rushed out for lunch. Amora stayed behind, waiting for the classroom to empty. It was easier that way. No bumping into sneering faces, no accidental trips from students who thought it was funny to watch her stumble. She walked to the cafeteria, clutching her lunch tray tightly. The moment she entered, the whispers started again. Why does she even eat? She should be fasting for the next 5 years. She's embarrassing to look at. Amora's fingers trembled, but she forced herself forward. She found a lonely corner, sat down, and began eating quietly. If she ignored them, maybe they'd get bored. But they never did. Bella, the queen of Crestwood Academy, strolled toward Amora's table. With her perfect hair, flawless skin, and designer clothes, she was the school's undisputed princess. And she hated Amora. "Still eating, fatty?" Bella sneered. "Do you ever stop?" Amora kept her eyes on her food. "Maybe if you looked half as good as me, someone would actually notice you exist." A few students laughed. "Just ignore them," Amora told herself. "Just get through the day." But Bella wasn't done. "You know," she continued, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "this school is for the rich and beautiful. People like you just..." Crash! Amora flinched as Bella knocked over her tray, sending her food splattering onto the floor. Gasps filled the room. Some students covered their mouths to hide their laughter. Others just stared, waiting to see what Amora would do. For a second, silence stretched between them. Then Amora did what she always did. She stood up, wiped her hands, and walked away. But this time, she wasn't just walking away from the mess on the floor. She was walking away from the person they thought she was. She was done being invisible. Amora walked down the hallway with her head down, gripping the straps of her backpack tightly. The sound of laughter still echoed in her ears, but she refused to let them see her break. She had thought she could survive another day, just endure the whispers, ignore the stares. But today felt different. Today, Bella and her friends had taken things too far. By the time she reached the girls' restroom, her hands were trembling. She pushed open the door and locked herself inside a stall. Slowly, she sank onto the closed toilet seat, staring at her hands. They weren't just trembling from anger. They were trembling from exhaustion. Exhaustion from always pretending it didn't hurt. Exhaustion from always being strong. She took a deep breath and let her head fall back against the stall door. "Why me?" she whispered. But she already knew the answer. Crestwood Academy was a school for the wealthy, the beautiful, the powerful. And Amora? She was none of those things, at least, not in their eyes. She stayed in the stall for a while, breathing in and out, waiting for the shaking to stop. Eventually, she stood up, wiped her face, and forced herself back to class. The rest of the day passed in a blur. More whispers. More giggles behind her back. But she pushed through, keeping her face blank, keeping her emotions locked inside. Then, during the last period, it happened. The moment that would change everything. The ultimate humiliation. It was history class, and their teacher, Mr. Lawson, was droning on about the past rulers of Nigeria. Amora kept her head down, taking notes. She had learned to stay quiet, to never draw attention to herself. But Bella wasn't about to let her go unnoticed. "Sir," Bella's voice rang out suddenly, fake sweetness dripping from her tone, "I have a question." Mr. Lawson raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead." Bella turned to Amora, a wicked smile curling her lips. "Don't you think Amora should teach this topic? I mean, she's basically shaped like a history drum." Laughter exploded in the room. Some students covered their mouths, pretending to hold it in. Others didn't even try. Amora froze. The words hit her like a slap. Her heart pounded, her ears buzzed, and for a second, it felt like the whole world was spinning. Mr. Lawson cleared his throat uncomfortably. "That's enough, Bella." But the damage was done. Bella smirked and leaned back in her chair. She had gotten exactly what she wanted. Amora forced herself to keep writing, even though she could barely see the words on her paper. She wouldn't let them see her cry. Not here. Not ever. But Bella wasn't finished. As soon as the bell rang, signaling the end of the day, Bella and her friends followed Amora outside. "Hey, wait up." Bella called mockingly. "Aren't you going to say thank you? We just made you the center of attention." Amora quickened her steps, but the group was faster. Before she could escape, one of Bella's friends, Sandra, stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Oops, sorry," Sandra said, pretending it was an accident. Then, with a swift movement, she reached out and yanked Amora's backpack off her shoulders, unzipping it in one go. Books, pens, and personal belongings tumbled to the ground. A small pink lunchbox spilled open, revealing a simple home-cooked meal, rice and beans, neatly packed by her father. Bella picked up the lunchbox and held it up for everyone to see. "Wow," she said, laughing. "No fancy cafeteria food. Just this poor people's meal." Amora's face burned. Not the lunchbox. Not the one thing that reminded her of home. A crowd had already gathered, students watching and whispering. Sandra gave the lunchbox a disgusted look before dumping the food onto the ground, stomping on it with her designer sneakers. Gasps filled the air. Tears pricked Amora's eyes. Not because of the food. Not even because of the humiliation. But because of what it represented. Her father had woken up early to make that meal for her. He always told her, "No matter what, eat well. Don't let anyone make you feel small." And now, his kindness lay crushed beneath the feet of people who would never understand its value. For a moment, Amora wanted to scream. To grab Bella and shove her. To make her feel even a fraction of the pain she had caused. But then, something shifted inside her. She took a deep breath. Then another. And instead of reacting, instead of giving them the satisfaction of seeing her break, Amora bent down, picked up her scattered books, and calmly placed them back into her bag. The crowd murmured in confusion. "She's not saying anything," someone whispered. Bella frowned. She had expected tears. A reaction. Anything. But Amora just zipped her bag, stood up, and gave Bella one long, unreadable look. Then, without a word, she walked away. For the first time, Bella didn't feel victorious. And she had no idea why. The next morning, Crestwood Academy was buzzing with excitement. A special announcement had been made. The school's owner would be visiting for an important meeting. Nobody knew why, but one thing was certain, it had to be someone powerful. The students whispered among themselves, throwing out names of wealthy businessmen and politicians. "It has to be Bella's dad," Sandra said confidently. "Who else could it be? Everyone knows he practically owns half of this city." Bella smirked, flipping her perfect hair. "Obviously." The students nodded in agreement. It made sense. After all, Bella acted like she owned the school, bossing people around, deciding who was cool and who wasn't. If her father was the owner, that meant Bella had even more power than they thought. But Amora, she didn't care about the rumors. She just wanted to survive the day. The humiliation from yesterday still lingered in her chest, but she refused to let it crush her. She sat quietly at the back of the assembly hall as the students gathered, waiting for the big announcement. Finally, The principal walked onto the stage, microphone in hand. Good morning, students. Today is a very special day. We are honored to welcome the owner of Crestwood Academy, the person responsible for making this school what it is today. The room fell silent. Bella sat up straighter, adjusting her uniform, a smug smile on her face. Any moment now, they would call her father's name, and she would finally get the respect she deserved. The principal continued. Please welcome the owner of this school, Mr. Anthony Okafor. The hall went dead silent. Then, whispers. Who? Wait, that name sounds familiar. Before anyone could react, a tall man in an expensive navy blue suit stepped onto the stage. His presence commanded respect, his face calm yet powerful. Amora stiffened in her seat. Because that man was her father. Gasps filled the hall as realization spread. Anthony Okafor, the billionaire businessman, the owner of multiple schools and companies, the man who had built Crestwood Academy from the ground up. And he was Amora's father. All this time, they had mocked her for being poor. They had humiliated her for wearing simple clothes, eating home-cooked meals, and not flaunting wealth like them. And yet, she had more power than all of them combined. Bella's face had gone completely pale. This has to be a mistake, she muttered, shaking her head in disbelief. But it wasn't. Because the next thing Mr. Okafor did was turn to the audience, smiling warmly. Before I begin my speech, I'd like to introduce someone very special, he said. Then, he looked directly at Amora. My daughter, Amora Okafor. Every single head turned to her. Eyes widened. Jaws dropped. Amora felt her heart pounding. Slowly, she stood up. For the first time, she wasn't the invisible girl. She wasn't the girl they mocked or ignored. She was the true heir to Crestwood Academy. And nobody had seen it coming. Silence blanketed Crestwood Academy as the weight of Mr. Okafor's announcement sank in. The grand hall, once filled with idle chatter and confident laughter, now buzzed with a mixture of shock, awe, and disbelief. Students exchanged wide-eyed glances. Even the popular clique that ruled these halls, once so full of arrogance, now looked diminished and vulnerable. Bella, who had always walked with an air of untouchable confidence, suddenly felt exposed. Her eyes darted around, searching for any sign of support in the sea of stunned faces, but found none. She fumbled with her hair, her fingers trembling as the realization set in. The power dynamics at Crestwood were shifting dramatically. Amora, now standing next to her father on the stage, felt a tumult of emotions. A mix of shock, anxiety, and an unfamiliar surge of power pulsed through her veins. For years, she had endured the humiliation of being labeled as the invisible or poor girl, silently absorbing each cruel remark. But now, everything was changing. Not only was she no longer invisible, she was being recognized as the true heir to a legacy built on hard work, perseverance, and undeniable success. Mr. Okafor's calm, resonant voice broke the heavy silence. Today, I want to remind you all that true worth is never measured by appearances or material wealth. It is determined by one's character, resilience, and kindness. His eyes moved slowly over the audience, lingering on familiar faces. The ones that had belittled Amora, the ones that had laughed when she stumbled in the hallway. We all have our struggles. And sometimes, the very qualities we think make us weak are the ones that make us strong. A murmur spread through the hall, and even Bella's group shifted uncomfortably in their seats. For the first time, they were forced to confront a truth they had never wanted to acknowledge. Amora's quiet dignity, hidden behind her simple clothes and gentle nature, had been misinterpreted as weakness. Instead, it was the very source of her inner strength. As the speech continued, Mr. Okafor invited Amora to share a few words. All eyes were now fixed on her, some with curiosity, others with regret, and a few with lingering malice. Amora hesitated for a moment. She looked down at her hands, remembering every note of kindness her father had given her, every word of encouragement that had helped her persevere. In that instant, she decided she wouldn't let their cruelty define her any longer. Taking a steady breath, Amora began to speak in a soft yet clear voice. For a long time, I felt invisible, as if my life didn't matter because I wasn't like everyone else. I was always the girl who got picked on, the one who was mocked for my simple clothes and the way I ate. I felt like I didn't belong." Her voice wavered slightly, but she pressed on. "But today, I learned that the way people see you doesn't always tell the truth about who you really are. I've spent years trying to hide my feelings and pretend that everything was okay, even when I was hurting. But I also learned that kindness and strength are not found in wealth or beauty, they're found in the choices we make and the way we treat each other." There was a moment of hushed silence as her words began to resonate. The bullies, those who had once thrown insults and lunches with such ease, shifted in their seats. Their eyes, once filled with cruelty, now betrayed hints of remorse. Even Bella's confident facade began to crumble. One of Bella's closest friends, Lisa, felt a pang of guilt. In the back of her mind, she remembered times when Amora's quiet smile had offered a silent welcome or when she had seen Amora help a younger student with homework after class. Lisa realized that perhaps they had been wrong all along. Amora continued, "I know many of you have laughed at me, made fun of the way I look or the things I do. And I know that your actions were not just about me, they were a reflection of your own fears and insecurities. I'm not here to condemn you, but to ask you to think about how we all deserve respect. We all deserve a chance to be heard, to be seen for who we truly are." Her words, filled with raw emotion and honesty, hung in the air. Some students fought back tears as the reality of their cruelty became impossible to ignore. Others looked down, shame written on their faces. The room, which had once been filled with laughter at someone else's expense, now bristled with an uncomfortable silence of introspection. At that moment, a surprising twist unfolded. Bella, the orchestrator of so much of Amora's suffering, stood up. The room tensed, everyone wondering if she was about to lash out or run away. Instead, she took a deep breath and slowly walked toward Amora. Her eyes, once filled with cold cruelty, now shimmered with regret. "Amora," she said softly, her voice breaking, I'm sorry." A hush fell over the hall. Bella's apology was unexpected, a crack in the once impenetrable armor of the school's most popular girl. In that simple moment, the balance of power shifted even further. Others began to rise as well, hesitant at first, then with more conviction. One by one, students started to speak, apologizing for their past actions, their voices trembling with sincerity. Even Mr. Lawson, who had once been so detached, added his own note of humility. "We are all here to learn, not just academics, but about life, compassion, and understanding. Today, let us learn that hurting someone for being different is not a sign of strength, but of fear." Amora felt a swell of emotions, pain, relief, and a cautious hope. She had spent so many years building walls around her heart, believing that vulnerability was a weakness. Yet now, as those walls began to crumble, she realized that her ability to forgive might be her greatest strength of all. As the assembly came to an end, the once divided student body was left with a profound message. Every person carries a story that is deeper and more complex than what meets the eye. The tables had turned in more ways than one, and for the first time in a long while, it seemed that everyone at Crestwood Academy was ready to look beyond the surface and see each other for who they truly were. Walking out of the hall, Amora felt a mix of relief and trepidation. The path ahead was uncertain. Would the change last, or would old habits and resentments creep back in? Only time would tell. But for now, as she stepped into the bright afternoon sunlight with her father by her side, Amora allowed herself a small, hopeful smile. The tables had indeed turned, and in that turning, she discovered the strength of forgiveness and the power of being true to oneself. The days following the dramatic assembly were filled with change, a slow, gentle shift in the corridors of Crestwood Academy. The atmosphere felt lighter, as if a dark cloud had finally lifted. Yet even as some students began to show regret, Amora knew that the path to healing would take time. In the weeks that followed, Amora's new status as the true heir to Crestwood did not bring the satisfaction many expected. Instead, it sparked a delicate transformation within everyone, including herself. The once arrogant halls of the school had become a place where each face seemed to hold a story of remorse and hope. Every morning, when Amora walked through the school gates, she noticed small changes. Where once whispered insults lingered like shadows, now kind words and gentle nods appeared. Classmates who had mocked her were seen helping one another with homework, quietly apologizing in the hallways. Even Bella, whose earlier apology had shocked everyone, now sat quietly in class, sometimes even sharing her notes with those who needed help. One rainy afternoon, Amora found herself waiting by the school library. Outside, puddles glistened under the soft drizzle, and the grey sky seemed to match the quiet mood in the room. As she sat on one of the old wooden chairs, she recalled the many painful moments of her past, the laughter, the insults, the moments of deep loneliness. She wondered if forgiveness was possible for everyone, or if some wounds would always remain too deep. Amora. A timid voice called from behind a stack of books. It was Lisa, the quiet girl who had once been part of Bella's clique. Lisa held a worn-out novel in her hand, her eyes full of hesitation and longing. "I'm sorry for everything," Lisa said softly. "I know words can't fix the past, but I want you to know that I see you now, the real you. Not just the girl we all misunderstood." Amora's eyes softened. In that quiet moment, the library felt like a safe space, a little world where new beginnings were possible. "Thank you, Lisa," Amora replied. "It means a lot to hear that." As the weeks passed, small acts of kindness began to weave a new tapestry within the school. Mr. Lawson, the history teacher who had once only seen the surface of his students, began spending extra time with those who struggled. Even the strict headmaster started to address the issues of bullying with a new sense of compassion. Bella, still burdened by regret, sought out Amora more than once after class. "I never knew how much my words could hurt," Bella admitted during one quiet moment in the empty corridor. "I want to change, but I don't know where to start." Amora, remembering her own journey of pain and healing, offered a gentle smile. "It starts with understanding that we all make mistakes," she said simply. "I forgave you not because what you did was okay, but because I believe everyone deserves a chance to be better." Her words were not about giving in to past cruelty. They were about choosing a higher path. It was a choice to let love, understanding, and kindness guide the future rather than anger and bitterness. One day, the school organized a community project, an effort to clean up the old garden behind the school. It was an idea born out of Mr. Okafor's vision, to build not just a better school, but a better community. Students, teachers, and even parents came together, armed with gardening tools, paint, and new hope. Amora found herself working side by side with many of those who had once ignored or ridiculed her. Together, they weeded, planted, and repainted broken benches. As the work progressed, small conversations turned into shared laughter and genuine compliments. "I never thought I'd see you smile like this every day," one of Bella's former friends remarked as she carefully watered a budding rose bush. Amora's eyes twinkled in response. "Sometimes, all it takes is a little care. Just like this garden, we all need nurturing to grow." The project became a symbol of transformation, a physical space where past hurts were gradually replaced by hope and unity. The garden bloomed with vibrant colors, each flower a reminder that beauty could come from even the most unexpected places. News of the transformation spread quickly beyond the school. Parents began attending meetings, teachers started implementing new programs focused on empathy and understanding, and even local news channels covered the story of how a single act of kindness could change an entire school's culture. One crisp morning, as autumn leaves danced along the school's walkways, Amora received an invitation to speak at a community event. The auditorium was filled with families, local leaders, and even former bullies who had come seeking redemption. Standing at the podium, Amora's voice trembled at first, but then grew stronger with each word. "I once believed that being different was a curse, a mark that set me apart from everyone else. But I have learned that every mark, every scar, tells a story of survival and strength. Our differences make us unique, and our struggles make us human." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Today, I ask you all to choose kindness. Choose to see beyond appearances and to understand that every person is fighting a battle you may know nothing about. Let's build a world where we lift each other up instead of tearing each other down." The audience listened in rapt silence, many nodding in agreement. Tears shone in the eyes of those who had once been blinded by cruelty. For a moment, the room was filled with a powerful energy, a shared commitment to change. After the event, as the crowd dispersed into the cool evening air, Amora found herself surrounded by smiling faces. Even Bella came forward, her expression earnest and humble. "I hope I can be a better person," Bella said softly. "I want to learn how to treat people with the respect they deserve." Amora reached out and placed a hand on Bella's shoulder. "We all have the chance to change. What matters is that we try." In that simple gesture, the scars of the past began to heal. The transformation was not perfect, and there were still days when old habits threatened to return. But with each passing day, every small act of kindness added up to something much larger, a community that learned to value each other for who they truly were, not for what they appeared to be. By the end of the school year, Crestwood Academy had become known not just as a place of academic excellence, but as a beacon of change, a school where compassion and understanding reigned over cruelty and indifference. Amora's journey, from the invisible girl to a symbol of strength and kindness, had sparked a movement that touched the hearts of everyone around her. As Amora walked through the now bright hallways, she realized that her past pain had led her to this moment of empowerment and healing. In forgiving those who hurt her, she had unlocked the greatest gift of all, the power to change hearts and minds with nothing more than kindness. And so, in the gentle whispers of the wind and the soft glow of a new day, Crestwood Academy stood transformed, a living reminder that even in a world filled with scars, love and understanding can blossom into something extraordinary. The story of Amora and her classmates had taught them that everyone, no matter how different or misunderstood, holds a light within. And when that light shines bright, it can change the world, one kind act at a time. This marks the end of More Than Meets the Eye. Thank you for following along on Amora's journey from pain and isolation to empowerment and hope.